verse through a story that many of you will be familiar with if you've been in church for a long time. I want to remind you that the book of John has 92% new material. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they all have very similar content. The book of John has 92% new material compared to the other books. John's intention is that he would write a spiritual gospel with spiritual content. He would call miracles signs all through the book of John. Why? Because he's trying to get a message to the listeners of what Jesus was doing when he was on the earth. Have you ever told your kids or said to a kid, or maybe not a kid, maybe an adult in your house, go and have a look. They're like, I can't find it. Go to the cupboard, have a look. The shirt is on the right-hand side. They go to the cupboard. They come back. There's no shirt. Yes, there is the shirt. Go back, have a look. It's on the right-hand side. It's right in. They go and have a look. They come back. Can't see it. Nowhere to be found. And you know it's there. You put it there. You know the only thing that's missing is that they don't have the eyes to see it. They're looking, but they don't see it. They go to look, but they can't find it. And then you go in, and they're like, it's not here. You didn't put it here, and you walk straight in, and you pull it out of the closet and say, here it is, and then you walk out, and they're like, but I didn't see that any time. And this morning, we are going to talk about spiritual blindness. We are going to talk about the light and dark. On Tuesday night in Bible study, we talked about the Feast of Tabernacles, which we touched on briefly last week. And we talked about how in the Feast of Tabernacles, in this time period of Jesus, they had two ceremonies. One was the water ceremony, which we talked on last week, and one was the illumination ceremony. I think we have a picture that Shane shared with us on Tuesday. This is a picture of the illumination ceremony, or a type of picture. Those menorahs were 22 meters high. They were 5 stories high. We're talking about some serious light that filled the temple at the Feast of Tabernacles. The light would fill the temple and, in effect, fill all the city. And it was in this context, so they've just celebrated, it's in this context that Jesus would then reveal himself as, I am the light of the world. I mean, this is a master teacher. He's already said, I'm the living water. That was one of the ceremonies they did, remember, and they drew the water, and he would stand up and say, if anyone's thirsty, come to me and drink. And then the second ceremony that happened during this festival was this illumination festival where the whole city was lit up, and in that space, Jesus would declare, I am the light of the world. So let's turn to John chapter 9. While you're finding it, I want to show you how many times light is mentioned all through the book of John. In John 1, John 3, John 5, John 8, John 9, John 11, John 12, a couple of times, over and over and over, we see the theme of light. We actually see the theme of light and darkness. Talking about darkness as in we're lost, we're dark to the truth, we're lost and dark in unbelief, and then when we are in the light, we are in the light of his love and grace and mercy, we are in the light of his truth, we are in the light of the Savior. And John will go over and over to tell us that Jesus is the light of the world. John 8 says this, verse 12, it says, then Jesus spoke again to them, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And now we're going to read John 9. You've got your Bibles? Here we go. Many of you will have the heading, if you're using a handheld rather than your digital Bible, it'll say the 6th sign. Some Bibles will say the 5th sign, just because they're counting differently. Same sign. And notice that it says, a healing of a man born blind. That's going to be important. A healing of a man, and then the important part is born blind. So just keep that in your mind. Here we go. I think it's going to be on the screen. We're going to read it together. Would you read it with me? As he was passing by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was blind?" So Jesus was passing by, and he saw the man. Now remember that shirt, you go to the wardrobe and you don't see anything. Can you imagine that all through this festival, as thousands of people came to Jerusalem, remember there were 3 feasts or festivals that they would go up to Jerusalem, and the Feast of Tabernacles was one of them. Thousands of people are going, how many people saw him? Like really saw him. I mean, they may have noticed him, but did they see him enough to have compassion, to have mercy, to have a conversation? But Jesus saw the man. How many didn't see him, or maybe noticed him but didn't see him? But Jesus didn't want us to miss the importance of this miracle, so he mentions the word in this passage of John 9. Jesus mentions the word blind 13 times. If 13 times the word blind is mentioned over and over and over, anyone who writes anything will know there's a point that Jesus is trying to get across. I am the light of the world, he said. And in true religious form, the disciples are waxing lyrical. The disciples decide to get philosophical, but the disciples ask the question that many of us ask when we've faced chronic pain or illness, when we've faced things in our lives. We ask what question? Why? Why are they like this? We want to know why we face challenges, why we face disabilities, why we face trials, troubles, why do we have this thorn in the flesh? And the disciples are asking Jesus, why? Who sinned, they ask, the man or his parents, that he was born blind? Let's read verse 3 together. And Jesus said, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned," Jesus answered. "This came about so that God's works might be displayed in him. We must do the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." In the original manuscript, you could read it this way. "Neither has this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day." Jesus is not saying that God has put this man through a lifetime of misery so that he could heal him. That is not what the context is saying. Have a look at the original text. Look. "Neither has this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me." Jesus was taking an opportunity. While the disciples wanted to know why, Jesus was taking an opportunity to say, hey, stop asking why. It's the wrong question. The right question is, we've come to change this situation. The right question is that when Jesus comes on the scene, everything can change. The right question is, Jesus, what can you do? In John's gospel, that little phrase, the work of God, see that? The works of God. It refers back to John 6:29, where Jesus himself says, "This is the work of God, that you believe in him who he has sent." So Jesus is saying, I'm about to do something even more significant than the healing of this blind man. I'm going to enable him to believe that I am the rescuing king. He was taking advantage of a situation to show the disciples, to show this man, to create change, to bring change, to let him know, I care about your physical state, but even more than that, I care about the spiritual state of how you see and what you believe and where your heart's at. You know, pain and suffering can have a divine purpose. Jesus' pain and suffering certainly did. This man's pain and suffering certainly did. Sometimes God chooses to display his power on the platform of pain and suffering. And before you think, well, that's not very nice, you've seen this. You've seen a person or a family or a group who have been through incredible pain or suffering, and their response to their pain or suffering is so extraordinary that it causes your faith to get bigger, don't you think? I mean, you look at someone who all their kids did the right thing their whole life. You know, they ended up dying in their sleep. They didn't have any hassles. Their mortgage was paid off, you know, when they were 5 years old. Like, they had nothing wrong. And you think, well, that's nice. But there's something very challenging and very encouraging to us when we see people who have gone through trials and testings and they've faced difficulties and challenges, and they let their faith rise. They literally, it causes them to press into God. And for us who believe, us who look on, there is a sense that that brings great encouragement. Let's read verse 6. It says, "And after he said these things, he spit on the ground. He made some mud from the saliva, and he spread the mud on his eyes." Job 10:9 says, "Remember that you fashioned me like clay, you will turn me to dust again." Genesis 2:7, the reference that John is making here, that Jesus is obviously referencing, is where Adam was formed from the dust of the ground. Jesus was demonstrating an awareness of the Creator and the creation process, and he was using the very same materials that was used to shape Adam. He was using them to heal this blind man. Let's go to verse 7. I told you, I'm just going to teach through this. "Go," he told him, "wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he left, washed, and came back seeing. Okay, did you read that? So Jesus, like, you know, I'm not a great spitter. Jesus, like, gets some dirt and spits in his hand, spits in the dirt, makes some nice mud. I mean, my head goes, got to be a good spit, you know, to make mud. He would have had to have, like, there was a lot of spit there. I don't know how much spit there, but anyway, he makes mud, and then he puts it on the guy's eyes, and then he says, "Now you go blind. You go blind to the pool of Siloam." Jesus, he's blind? What are you doing? He says, "Go." He still can't see. I mean, when I was reading this, it just hit me so, I mean, you know it, but until you see it, and this is I don't know, picture from one of the Jesus movies of the guy with mud in his eyes. I don't know if it looked exactly like that, but he can't see. He has mud in his eyes, and Jesus says, "Go." And all I could think of was sometimes Jesus asks us to go when we have no idea where we're going. You know, Abraham, and it says that God asked him to go, and he had no idea where he was going. And sometimes God will ask us to go, and it's in the going and it's in the process that our healing will take place. And so Jesus puts mud and spit on his eyes. I mean, let's just think about this for a little minute. The beggars probably, I mean, we don't know this, but let's think it through. They were begging for money. Blind men, that's how they made a living. That's how they survived. The temple is where all the people would come. So if you would put yourself as a beggar, you'd ask people, put me where the most people are going to come by. The pool of Siloam, I think we have a map there. The pool of Siloam, I know you can't really see it. Okay, it's right down the bottom. See where the lower city is, and then you've got that little, it's right down the bottom. There's the pool of Siloam. The temple is about half a mile up. So Jesus wasn't saying, hey, just, go a little way and wash. Most probably, even if it was a little way, he's going blind. But most probably, he was going a fair distance blind. Can you imagine trying to get through all the people that were in the city, navigating that? He'd be bumping into people along the way, but Jesus purposely directs him to the pool in the midst of the festival. Now, we know all Jesus really has to do is speak a word. He doesn't have to spit and create mud. He doesn't have to get the dirt. In a second, he could speak the word and bring healing. So why? In Deuteronomy 28:28, under the old covenant, people who served false gods were cursed by their children, and their children were born blind. So when the disciples said to Jesus, well, who sinned, him or the man? They knew their Bible. They knew Deuteronomy 28, and they knew. And I love that Jesus comes and says, neither. Neither. So before you go and look at someone else's sin and make a judgment, before we go and, see whatever's going on and make our judgment, be very careful. Because we have no idea. That's between them and the Father. And the category of what God's going to do and how he's going to do it is not up to us. It's up to him, thank God. Here's what I love, though. Jesus used his DNA. He used his DNA in the dirt of the earth to put on the man's eyes, and as he washed, he could see. He used his very DNA to transform a condition that this man had had when? From birth. Okay, verse 8, it says, his neighbors and those who'd seen him before as a beggar said, isn't this the one who used to sit begging? And some said, he's the one, and others were saying, no, but he looks like him. And he kept saying, I'm the one. Like, hello, I couldn't see, and now I can see. I'm not playing a game here. I look the same. And so they asked him, then how were your eyes opened? The key word here is neighbors. He gets healed, and wherever he goes to, he now is amongst the people that knew him as he grew up. He is around the people that live next door. And his neighbors, see, when you get healed and when you get whole, the people around you, your neighbors, your next door neighbors, your family, they all begin to notice. What's happened to you? What's going on to you? And he answered, the man called Jesus made mud. What a story. He doesn't even say, the prophet Jesus. He doesn't say, Jesus, the Son of God. He just says, the man called Jesus. So now go back to the story. This man is the side of the road. He's begging, and Jesus is passing by, and he sees the man. And when he sees the man, the disciples are waxing lyrical. Why did this happen? And Jesus is like, no, that's not why. It didn't happen because he sinned or his parents sinned. But because this has happened, we can display the works of God right here, day and night, light and dark. And in that space, he spits, transfers his DNA into the dirt of the earth, puts it on the man's eyes and tells him to go. I wonder if he knew. I wonder if he knew at first who was putting the hands on his eyes. Did he say, hi, I'm Jesus, and I see you're blind, and I'm going to heal it? We don't know. It would seem weird for him just to all of a sudden go up and go, there must have been some kind of conversation. And he says, there was a man called Jesus. He made mud, he spread it on my eyes, and he told me, go to Siloam and wash. Listen, listen. So when I went and washed, read it with me, I received my sight. When he went and he washed. And then they asked him, where is he? And he said, well, I don't know. I mean, you have to put yourself in this guy's, all of a sudden, he's blind and now he can see. It's done in quite an unusual kind of way. And now all of a sudden, I don't know where Jesus is. I don't even know him. I don't even know this man. Verse 13, it says, they brought the man who used to be blind to the Pharisees. So in those days, when a leper was made clean or someone got healed, they would have to present them to the religious leaders of the day before they could come back into society. So they brought the man who used to be blind to the Pharisees. The day that Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes, and if you're taking notes, you want to underline this, this is the key, and opened his eyes was a Sabbath. Okay. Hello, Pharisees about ready to have a conniption because Jesus has healed like the Son of God would on the Sabbath. And then the Pharisees asked him again how he received his sight. And he told them, he said, he put mud on my eyes. He told them, I washed and I can see. And some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God because he doesn't keep the Sabbath. Like if someone comes to you and says, I was blind, but now I'm seeing. Unbelievable, this is amazing. I've never seen that before in my life. Who is this guy? No. Well, he did it on the Sabbath. Stupid religious people. Don't you just want to go, oh, you missed what was right in front of your eyes. And some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God because he doesn't keep the Sabbath. But others were saying, how can a sinful man perform such signs? And there was a division among them. Surprise, surprise. And again they asked the blind man, what do you say about him since he opened your eyes? And the blind man says, he's a prophet. The Jews did not believe this about him, that he was blind and received sight, until they summoned the parents of the one who received his sight. Are you getting yourself in this story now? So he's in front of the religious leaders. They don't believe a word he said. Go and call your mum and call your dad. He's a grown man, but call your mum and call your dad. And so the parents come. They summon the parents and they ask them, is this your son? The one you say was born blind? Like, you say it was born blind? You say he was born blind? You know, that's why he's here. He was born blind. How then does he now see? And they said, we know this is our son and that he was born blind. Well, we're glad, Mum and Dad, that you know. But we don't know how he now sees, and we don't know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He's of age. He will speak for himself. And his parents said these things because they were afraid of the Jews, since the Jews had already agreed that if anyone confessed him as the Messiah, he would be banned from the synagogue. This is why his parents said, he's of age, ask him. Just let that sink in. So a second time, they summoned the man who had been blind and told him, give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner. And he answered, whether or not he is a sinner, I don't know. But one thing I do know, I was blind and now I can see. I love what Andy Stanley says. He says, you don't need to know everything to know something. He didn't know everything about Jesus. He hasn't confessed Jesus as Lord yet. He didn't know all the details. He just knew that he was blind and he could see. Yeah. And for some of you, for some of us, that's about all we feel like we know. Like we read this and it's sometimes a bit confusing, but what we do know is we were lost and now we're found. What we do know is we were living a life of sin and he pulled us out of the pit. What we do know is once we lived without hope, but now we have hope in Jesus. Hallelujah. You don't need to know everything just to know something. Just start with what you know. This week I went up to one of our local shops here and to the beauticians, to be honest. And I went in and it was shut. And it says, you know, knock on the door or rings. I knocked on the door and they opened. It was just the lady who owns the shop up here. Her name's Audrey. And honestly, I was in my lunch break. I was like, let's get this done really quick. I'm sitting there. She's doing my nails. And she says to me, have you ever had a time in your life where everything went wrong? I'm like, oh, and in my head, I have to confess to you, in my head, I'm like, I just want to get my nails done. I didn't say it out loud. And I said, yeah, I have actually. I've had a time. She goes, no, I mean everything. She's a beautiful Vietnamese woman. I mean, everything's going wrong. She goes, my husband. She starts listing all the things that she's facing. My house, my business. She's listing everything. And I'm like, wow, okay. Like, it's just her and I in the shop. Obviously, she hadn't planned to open. Wasn't a good day, so she decides to open. I don't really go there anytime. And then she asked me, what do you do? And I said, oh, I like work at the church down the road, St. Mary's. I said, no, I work at HopePoint. Oh, there's a school and a preschool, yes. And what do you do there? Do you teach piano? I said, no, I don't teach piano. I can't actually read music, but that's okay. They found out last night. I said, no, I don't teach piano. I said, we enjoy helping people and serving people and telling them about Jesus. And then she begins to say, if you were me, what would you do? And she tells me this big story. I'm like, and then I just began, okay, God, you've landed me right here for a reason this morning. I get it. And I just began to talk. And I said to her, well, I guess the thing is that I might do it a little bit differently. What do you mean? What, and I'm like, oh no. And she said, and I said, look, I believe in Jesus. I believe in God. Like, these opportunities don't normally just land in your lap as you're getting your nails done, right? Normally. And so she begins to have this conversation with me. Anyway, everything went fine, and she's doing my nails, so I didn't want to say something bad, and then she wrecked my nails or something, Anyway, as I'm leaving, she said to me, showed me her kids go to Bankstown Grammar, and I got the full story. She says to me, I pray every day. And I said to her, I'll pray for you. And then that little feeling that you get when you know that you should do something. And so I turned to her and I said, let me pray for you now. Okay. And I'm like, wow, I wasn't expecting that, And so literally just put my arm around her. She's tiny. Put my arm around her and just began to pray for her. I didn't know how to solve all her problems. I didn't. But I knew the God who did. And I didn't need to know everything. All I needed to know is if I was in the same position that she is in, Jesus would help me so Jesus could help her. That was all I could think of in the time. My head was not there. But I could just think, if I was that woman and I was facing what she was facing, all I knew was he is a very present help in times of trouble, and that when I call on him, he would answer. And so I just said to her, that's all I can give you. And just maybe, when the things you're walking through, when you feel like you're blind, and all of a sudden you can see, don't discount the people around you that will begin to be changed as you begin to tell your story. So they ridiculed him, verse 28, "You're that man's disciple." Oh no, here we go, verse 26. Then they asked him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" "I already told you," he said, "and you didn't listen." "Why? Do you want to hear it again?" This is Pastor Warren's favorite line. We've talked about this week. "You don't want to become his disciples too, do you?" I mean, they're just like, now really starting to get on his nerves. They ridiculed him and said, "You're that man's disciple, but we're Moses' disciples. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but this man, we don't know where he's from." And then the man says this. "This is an amazing thing," the man told him. "You don't know where he's from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners. But if anyone is God-fearing and does his will, he listens to him. Throughout history, no one has ever heard of someone opening the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he wouldn't be able to do anything." I mean, this is this beggar on the side of the road schooling these Pharisees. And he says, "You were born entirely in sin," they replied, "and are you trying to teach us?" And they threw him out. So what did we learn from that verse that we haven't kind of heard in the story? No one up until this point had been born blind, had been made whole. Jesus did something for the very first time. And some of you are in situations where you have never seen God redeem this situation in anyone else before. You don't have a testimony. You don't have a precedent. Jesus doesn't need a precedent. He creates the precedent. And right here in this miracle, for the very first time in history, your Bible says, a man who was born blind could now see. Oh, this should stir your faith this morning, that there are things that you're going to Jesus about, there are things that you're praying about, and they are things that are not beyond what your God can do. He's not afraid that he's never done it before. Verse 35, so Jesus heard that they had thrown out the man, and when he found him, I love that. Jesus went and found him again, and he asked, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" "Who's he, sir, that I may believe in him?" So up until this point, he didn't know he was God. Like, he had no idea. I'm laboring on this point because some of us are so hooked on what we don't know. We're so hooked on, well, we don't know everything that everyone else knows, and I haven't been a Christian that long, and I'm still learning. We're all learning. We're all in this together. Some of us are a little bit further than others, and that's why we have each other. But the whole point is that he still did not know who Jesus was. And Jesus answered, "You have seen him, in fact. He is the one speaking with you." And immediately he says, "I believe, Lord," and he worshipped him. "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. Verse 39, Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, in order that those who do not see will see, and those who do see will become blind." Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard these things and asked him, "We aren't blind too, are we?" "If you were blind," Jesus told them, "you wouldn't have sinned. But now that you say we see, your sin remains." Jesus uses this illustration to get a message across. I mean, this was a private miracle with this guy who was the side of the road. These Pharisees, like, they're going to make it all about them and about the Sabbath and about how ticked they are that Jesus did it this way. And really, this was for this man, for his transformation, and all of a sudden, you're like, oh, actually, it's not. Jesus was addressing their spiritual blindness, and he would use the physical blindness of this man to address the spiritual state of their heart. And I want to finish with this, if the musicians would come this morning. There are 4 different reactions to Jesus. And I want you to find yourself in the passage. There were the neighbors. When they found out that this man who was born blind could now see, they were skeptical and they were surprised. There were the Pharisees, who were the religious leaders. Interesting, just a side note. There were over 600 rules that the Pharisees had created. God gave 80 different rules of the law. They go ahead and create another 520, and it became a part of their traditions and a part of their, and Jesus, when you actually look at it, what Jesus did wasn't breaking the Sabbath at all. But their little rules that they had put in, their little man-made, Jesus had come and thrown it out of the water and said, don't you understand that the Sabbath is not about what you think it's about? The Pharisees' disbelief, prejudice, they were more concerned with man-made rules than God-made people. Oh, can you hear that? They were more concerned with man-made rules than God-made people. Now, before you go, I'm definitely not a Pharisee. Some of you are leaders, some of you are even in your workplaces, maybe who are in church, maybe in sporting teams, your coaches, your leaders, your bosses, your CEOs, you employ people, you look after people, you influence people. Be very careful when the priority is the man-made rule over the God-made people. God's heart is for people. And that's not to say that there aren't rules and God himself had given them 80 rules and laws. I mean, imagine if we didn't have, laws even on our roads. I mean, the amount of fatalities. I mean, there are reasons for laws, there's reasons for rules. But they had instructed and put in man-made rules and forgotten about the God-made people. And as leaders of his house, in your workplace, in your families, with your kids with your parents, we need to value each other and not overlook each other just because we want things done. They thought that they were in perfect step with God. And then Jesus came along. And he threatened to undermine everything they know, everything they knew. Maybe you're the parents in this story. They believed, but they kept quiet because of fear of man. They kept quiet because they were worried about what other people would say. I mean, we're told that in the scriptures. Or maybe you're the blind man and you're growing in faith. I mean, you notice the progression of this blind man. At the very beginning, it was the man called Jesus. And then you notice the next one, it's the prophet called Jesus. And then the next one, Jesus would say, have you seen the Son of Man? And he says, no, but if I see him, and then he says, you're looking at him, and then immediately I believe. He was growing in faith. Oh, I want to grow in my faith. I've been a Christian all my life and have loved Jesus all my life. But I'm growing in my faith. Actually, I don't even want to be a part of a church that's not growing. That's boring. If you look at me and think I'm the same person I was at 15 or 25, you're looking at the wrong person. I'm not that person. And you are not either. God is working in us and with us and through us, that He would change us to be more like Him. So when you see someone walk in, don't think about some crazy thing they did 15 years ago. We're not that kind of church. We're not. We're the kind of church that we give second chances and third chances, and you know what, probably 50 chances and 70 chances. We're a bunch of misfits. And because we are, we all fit. You know, we've been talking about encounter this year. This man encountered Jesus. Oh, did he encounter him? And when he did, his neighbors knew. The stuck-up religious people knew. His family knew.